Hey everyone, welcome to CIS 137 Class 18. It's only 20 classes, so this is the third to last class. So today we're going to be learning about how to get a domain name. We're going to talk about analytics, and we're going to talk about the final project assignment, which is due next Friday. So project part 4 is due this Friday. The last project will be due next Friday. So getting a domain name. So a domain name makes your site easier to find. It's basically, it turns your IP address into actual words that people can remember a lot more easily. Domains cost money, usually paid annually. You might find some sites that'll give you free domains. I think Wix.com gives you a free domain. At least, I don't know. I didn't look into it. Don't quote me on it. But usually domains cost money, and you have to find them. And you need to get a domain through a domain registrar. In addition, your domain has to be unique. It can't be taken by anyone else yet, so you can't register for google.com. Or someone already has google.com. So what does a domain look like? So a domain can be broken up into several parts. The part on the far right is called the top-level domain, and that's usually .com is the most prevalent one. But there are a lot more than just .com. There's, if we look at a list of these, pull up Chrome. So just do a quick search for top-level domains. So you can either check ICANN. ICANN is actually the official source, so let's go to the official source. So there's a long list. So these are all the things that could be at the end. So you could have a .ai, a .com should be in here, .club. Yeah, here's .com. There's .life. All kinds of top-level domains. Then, in addition to the top-level domain, you have your domain. So domain is the actual name that you register. So you have to make sure this is unique. The combination of this plus the top-level domain should be unique. Now this domain can only have certain characters in it. So it can have any numbers, letters, and just hyphens. And it can have other special characters into it, but you should just stick to hyphens, letters, and numbers. And it should be something that is easy for people to remember and type. And then you have this subdomain, which isn't really part of your domain, but it basically gives you some extra information and extra routing abilities. When you own one domain, you can have it split out into many subdomains. So a common subdomain is www. In the beginning of the World Wide Web, there was, you could only visit a website by putting www dot something, the domain dot the top level domain. These days, you can usually leave off that subdomain and just put webdevtech.com, and it will work. So www is kind of superfluous, but you see in situations where people have an API, for instance. So the OpenWeather API starts with api.openweatherapp.com. Other people have used it for FTP, so you can have ftp.webdevtech.com. Any kind of subdomain you would like, you could put in the front here, and you could do special routing based on that subdomain. 1 second. So when we get our domain, we have to first buy the domain, then we have to actually register it with a domain name server to hook it up to our actual website. So let's do an example of that. So right now we have our website. I never took down cis137.firebaseapp.com. And one thing you'll note, excuse me, one thing. One thing you'll note is that the temperature is not working down here. Now this is actually a problem with the Open Weather app API right here. Basically, our site is an HTTPS, and Open Weather Map is only available through HTTP, and the browser does not like that HTTPS. HTTP is trying to be loaded over HTTPS. HTTP is non-secure. HTTPS is secure. So we're getting this problem where the Open Weather Map is just not connecting. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that from the front end. So just don't worry about it for now. The best thing we can do is find another weather API that uses HTTPS instead. So here's the site. It still works. We're going to hook up a domain name with this site. Now for this class, I bought a domain name called WebDevTech, as we saw in the previous. I got it from a site called oneandone.com. Now oneandone.com lets you search for domains, and when you check, you can see if your domain is available. And also show me that cis137.com is available. And I can also get .org, .net, .info. I can do .online, cis137.store, .co, .global, .club. I could register all these, but you see, the more you register, the more it's going to cost. It's $9 for a .com address for a year. And then after that, it goes up to $15. That's about the going rate for a .com address, but you could get some pretty expensive looking ones. So for example, these premium domains, so they have amersys.com, you'd have to pay $2,700 to get it. Then it's just $15 a year afterwards. If you choose a shorter domain, usually there's going to be labeled as premium domains. So let's say we want like web dev. So webdev.com is taken, but we have webdevl.com for $4,000, or webdevhq $8,100. So here are some more domain registrars you could use. One is one of my favorites, just because you can usually find deals on there where you can get a domain for a year for just $1, which is pretty cool. Domains.google.com is relatively new, but they have a good searching feature, which, surprise, surprise, Google has good search. And www.godaddy.com. That is pretty commonly used. And they usually have similar deals to one-on-one. I don't know why, but I prefer one-on-one over GoDaddy. Just personal preference. All right, so now we're going to hook up the Firebase app to our domain. Now to do this, I have it listed here. There's a help page on Firebase explaining this. So really, you would go to console. I'm going to go to my project, and then I'm going to go to hosting. And then I have the default domain, which is cis-137.firebaseapp.com. I'm going to connect a new domain. And it's going to be webdevtech.com. So now I have to add a record to my DNS provider to verify that I own webdevtech.com. So I do that. I'm going to log into one-on-one on another screen. And I'm going to follow these instructions here to hook up the domain. And another documentation right here to verify ownership on one-on-one. This is all you need to do. So you need to log into your one-on-one control panel and select the relevant package. So I'm logged in. Click domain center, or really domains. So the actual interface on the website is a little different than, and I'll show you in 1 second. Okay, so here we go. So I clicked on DNS settings to edit the DNS settings. It was a little bit different than it's showing. I'm going to go down to TXT SRV records. I'm going to add one, the TXT record. And I just need to paste in the value that was provided by Firebase. Press add. Save it, modify it. Okay. So now I can verify. So in quick setup or advanced, we're just going to do quick setup. And this is going to hook up the webdevtech.com to the IP address for my Firebase app. So we see webdevtech.com is listed here. Oh, so, okay, I need to add these A records to my domain. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to go to webdevtech, edit DNS settings. I'm going to do my A records and do another IP address. I'm going to take this IP address and put it into my address record here. And then this one, I don't think I can do in this DNS. Now look here, it may take up 48 hours for changes to the DNS settings to propagate throughout the entire domain name system. So DNS servers are communicating over a protocol to exchange information about the domains they manage, and that can take a while for it to pass through because they don't want to be checking all the time constantly for every domain. So what they have on there is an expiration date on each domain. So it only checks, so it'll cache the domain to address resolution locally on the DNS server, but then if the domain is, if the expiration date has reached, then it'll go get a fresh IP address from the originating DNS server. So there could be a stale IP address in the other DNS servers while it's waiting for the expiration date to hit. So we're going to have this one A record on here. Some DNSs let you put in multiple A records. We're not going to be able to with this. So now if you try to go to webdevtech.com, then it did not work because it still has that expired A record in there. So it might take a while for this to actually appear. You can try things like going into incognito mode. And incognito mode will circumvent the browser cache, so you can actually, this is actually working here. See, his only problem was the not secure HTTPS. Firebase says it'll take care of that here. Wait for SSL certificate provisioning. Once domain ownership is verified, we will provision an SSL certificate for your domain and deploy across our global CDN. This process can take several hours. So our domain is not completely set up yet. We can also, would you like to connect www.webdevtech.com too? We could do that. We're not going to do that right now for time purposes. So now our site's set up. So in a couple hours, our SSL certificate will appear, so it won't have that big warning about the site being insecure. And then we'll have our live domain hooked up to our site, and that's pretty amazing. So after we do that, we want to add our site to the search engines. So at a minimum, we just need to index on Google, and it's actually really easy. You just click on the tool to submit URL. And we're going to put our URL in here. So it's going to be just webdevtech.com. Click I'm not a robot. And we're going to submit the request. And that's it. So now the Google search engine will add that to their crawler, and they'll crawl the site, index it, and determine if how it should rank in the search rankings. You could also index on Bing, but generally, once you index on Google, then the other search engines will use Google to find your site and index that way. So next up, let's talk about analytics. So analytics allow you to find out who is visiting your site in an anonymous fashion, and you can find out what they are doing. So there are lots of demographics that are available when you're viewing analytics, and they include age, gender, location, so where they're located in the world, what browser the user is using, and or what device they are browsing on. So it could be a phone, could be a computer, and it could be a specific phone. It could be a Samsung Galaxy, or it could be an iPhone. So it lets you know who your visitors are, how they're looking at your site, and where they're coming from. So it could be, they clicked on a link on Stack Overflow or found you on Google. That information is usually available on analytics. In addition to who the person is, you can find out what they did on your site. So you can see how the user flows to your site, which means what links they clicked on, how long they were there, how long they were on each page, and you can tell if they are repeating visitors. So if they come back later, or the next day, you can see how often they're actually visiting your site. So we're going to jump right into a demo of how to hook up analytics, what analytics look like for in React and on the web. So for this, we're going to use Google Analytics. Now, if you look at the demo notes, there's two sides of demo notes here. The Google Analytics is just available at analytics.google.com. I went ahead and hooked up an analytics for CIS 137, and it's really easy to create. You can just follow the instructions. Once you go to analytics.google.com, just sign in with your Google account, and then you add whatever account you want. And all I need to do is hook this up to my site. The important piece is that I need. First, let's look at Google Analytics. So here we have real-time reports, so we can see who's on our site right now. And right now there's 0. I don't have this hooked up yet. You can check out your audience, so you can see who are people that are using your site over a certain amount of days. You can do some more information. You can do their age, gender. You can see their interests. So that'll be like if they're interested in sports or running. That actually shows up in here. It's pretty creepy marketing details based on your cookies and all kinds of tracking stuff that's inside your browser without you knowing. Find out what language they speak, where they are in the world. You can see if they're a new user, if they're returning, what browser, what OS, what network, what mobile device. And then some custom stuff you can put in from your site and other stuff as well. So acquisition is important, especially for marketing. If you're doing some external marketing, buying Google AdWords, then you want to know if your money is being well spent. So you would check the acquisition to see where people are actually coming in to your site. And Google AdWords has a nice integration with Google Analytics. Surprise, surprise. So we're going to go ahead and add this to the site. So we're actually going to go into right here and grab the tracking ID. So this is the only tracking ID we'll need. And I actually have the URL in here incorrect. I was going to do cis137.org, but I switched my mind to webdevtech.com. We can set it to HTTPS. That's fine. We can even change the name. The tracking ID is not going to change, so we can still take this out. So we'll just have that up, ready to go. So let's go ahead and add this to the code of the site. So I have an example of what needs to be done in the demo notes. So hooking up React or hooking up Google Analytics with React can be done in the following way. So this hooks up Google Analytics by downloading a module called React GA, and this is just a wrapper around Google Analytics JavaScript. Then you create a component to do the actual analytics hit. So we see here reactga.set, and then we're setting a page, and I'll explain this when we do the demo here. And then we are registering a page view here. So this is like firing an event off to the Google Analytics server saying something happened here. Then down inside your browser router, you just need to add a route path and the component for analytics, and every time the route changes, it'll fire off our analytics component. Now this is one way to do it. There are a bunch of different ways to do the analytics on every page. I feel like this is the simplest way, so we can run with it. So here's where our that tracking ID will go. So let me pull up the code. Okay, so here's our app. It has 3 routes in it. We're going to hook up these routes to have Google Analytics on them. So first thing I need to do is yarn add React GA. I already installed it, so it should be pretty quick. Then we're going to import React GA from React GA. Let me just show you one thing real quick. So we have our link to / here. We have our route path / exact component home. If we add another route path up here, and don't say exact because we want to match whatever is in the home directory, and we'll add a component. So we can do the analytics component here. We can name it whatever we want. I'm going to create the analytics component right here. And for now, I'm just going to have it as a props. I'm going to have it just log something to the console. And have it return null. When I have it return null, that means it's not going to render anything to the actual browser. So I'm actually going to, that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm not going to hook up React.js yet. But if we go to yarn start, we're going to see what's inside props. So when you have a component inside of a route, you get some special props that you have access to. In particular, you have location prop, which will tell you what actual path you're on in your site at that given moment. So it's complaining React.js is not used. We're about to use it. In fact, we can do the this piece here, React.ga.initialize. That's our tracking ID. So our tracking ID was right here. Copy it again, paste it as a string. So they're surrounded by single quotes. And if we go to our site, so localhost 3000, we pull in our, we look for the console.log, and we see it right here. So we can put another message in here to make it clearer that that's actually analytics. Either do it like this, or we can add something to right here by separating it with a comma. And we see analytics and then the props right here. So props, we have 3 props that come from the React router. One is history, one is location, and the other is match. So the important one we want is location, and we want the search name or the path name from here and the search string. So now we'll see, if we click on about and we check out our props and we check out the location, the path name has changed to /about, which matches what's in our URL up here. So we could do props.location.pathname. Then save, and we see the props /about. So the analytics props about. Down here you can see these errors are actually me trying to use HTTPS instead of HTTP on Open Weather Map, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So keep that in mind. Okay, if we go to events, we see the prop is /events. And back to home, the prop is just /. So that's the props.location.pathname. So we're going to use the code that I put in the slides right here to actually register the page view instead of just logging it to the console. Go ahead and save that. And we'll go over here and see we see props to location.pathname. We're just adding the search on to the end of it, and we're registering the page view as pathname plus search. So this will automatically fire off every time we visit the site and as we click on certain things. Now analytics, if we check here, check if we see ourselves in real time. Yeah, here we are. So we're the one active user on the site. So it knows based on these events firing off that someone's clicking around on the site, they're spending time on the site, and it's us. And we can see our activity along these lines. And if there are more people here, and the top active page is /about, super active. And here's my location. It says I'm in Eldersburg. That's not true. It's closed now. So doing this, you could also find out, what your interests are. But you have to enable this. We can go ahead and enable it, but it's going to take 24 hours for it to show up. All right, so once we have that in our site, we have Firebase hooked up and everything. We can just say Firebase deploy, and it'll be live. So now Google Analytics is hooked up in our site. It's operating into the point where we can see what pages everyone's visiting. We can see their demographics, all that, and we could add custom events in there to find out more information and analyze our site more. But this is a good baseline for what you should do with Google Analytics. It's not too bad, right? All right, so let's go back. So all the code is here for your all the relevant code. Important things: initializing your React GA, creating the analytics component, and I have this return null up here because if you look in our code, React or return null is highlighted by WebStorm. It says primitive value from constructor will be lost when called with new. Okay, we don't care. So we're going to hit this fix, and we can explicitly set return type to null, and that's what this documentation comment comes from. So it'll hide that error. And then another important piece down here is inside your browser router, inside the div, because remember browser router can only have one child. We'll put a route path that is the home path, the root path slash, and it'll just fire off the analytics component. So when we don't have exact in here, it'll mean that it'll match any path that has that root in it, which is every path. So it's a good way to get a route to show up or a component to show up on every path. So the React.js GitHub looks like this. It's a pretty active project. Last commit 2 days ago, 1,053 stars, 108 forks, 49 watches. That's really good. So that means that this project is maintained regularly. They seem to put a lot of care and love into it, but the usage they have here is actually outdated. This is not using React Router version 4. React Router version 4 doesn't have this on update capability, and that's pretty much the main difference. Plus, they're not using ES6 let and const. They're just using bars. So this is older JavaScript. So follow the example. If you look at the example here, it's very similar to their example they have here, but it's just updated to work with React Router version 4. And instead of using window, we're using props from React Router. So you can see there's more things you can do inside of here. More specific and defined tracking. But just doing what we did is a good baseline again. Another good place to check is issues. An example of React Router version 4 usage is inside of here. And if we click inside there, we can see a bunch of different ways to skin a cat. I actually added my contribution to it, which I borrowed from another site. So I was inspired by another site, I will say. You can see here, some people try to use a history listener and higher order components, and they do component will mount, which is not very resilient in my opinion. But then I added last night my contribution down here. Oh, it's already gotten 2 thumbs up. Awesome. Vinyl and Super Pencil liked my contribution. So I was trying to fix their docs, trying to suggest something. That's what you should do with open source projects. Make them better. All right, so that's how you add Google Analytics to your site. You can start, marketing and figuring out where people are coming from, how your users are acting, and what they like, they don't like, they don't visit. It'll be very helpful in the future. So next up, your final project assignment. Oh, one more thing about Google Analytics and analyzing your site. We may talk about this next week, but there's this concept called A/B testing. In A/B testing, you show users one version of your site, or half the users one version of your site, and another half or piece of your users another version of your site. And you know which version you're showing each user, but to them, they're just visiting your site normally. So you're doing an experiment where you have a control and an experimental version of your site. Then you can compare how users visited your site, how they used your site, how they're engaged with your site from the control versus your experimental version to see if your experimental version, gives you better engagement or better analytics uh, than your control version. So doing that A/B testing, you can start to feel out what your users actually like in your site or what your site visitors want to see or how they interact with your site differently when you experiment. Uh, it's a powerful tool. There's variations of it, um, variations of that strategy, depending on what you want to test. But A/B testing is the general term for it. So we may dig into more into A/B testing next week. That's the final week. We're going to be going over conceptual stuff. That may be one of them. All right, so for the final project, you have to do 3 things to your site. 1, you must mobilize it. So that means, we'll go over what that means in a second. You must deploy it, and you must analyze it. And it's due by August 11th. That's the very last day of this summer semester. So you have to get it in by the 11th by 8 a.m. so I can get it graded and submit your final grades. If it's not in and I can't grade it, the final grade is going to get submitted without this final project, which is 20% of your grade. So mobilize. That means you need to use responsive web design techniques to make your page render in a reasonable fashion on mobile. It does not have to look beautiful, but the text should be readable. There should not be any horizontal scrolling. There shouldn't be any images that expand past the borders of the device. And it should look generally okay on a phone. I'm not trying to look for like a really professionally designed site on your mobile phone. I know that can be actually really difficult to do. All I'm looking for is the content to fit on the phone. So on small screens. And if you want to test it, you don't have to go on your phone. Go to the developer console in Chrome. Click on this little phone-looking button here, toggle device toolbar, and then you can pick your phone up here, whatever phone you would like to try out. So if we're on our iPhone 6 Plus, we can even make it 100%, and we can see what our site will look like on here, and we can do it on here too. Let's do it over here. Oh, it's already up. So here's what the device looks like on a phone, which is great. The images aren't overflowing to the side. There is a little bit of horizontal scrolling, but it's inconsequential. That's okay. The title fits on here. Our links fit on here. Whoa, that image isn't working. It's crazy. The events pretty much fit on here. This is fine. It's perfectly fine. You can try it on different phone sizes if you'd like. Oh, my site, I must have turned it off. Yeah, that's why. I deployed it, so I can just look over here. Let's go over here. So you see how this is how it looks on a Galaxy S5. It's not perfect, but the content still fits. You get a general idea of what the title is. I'm not going to ping you on if it doesn't fit perfectly. This minimizer not working properly. The club is going all over our text now. That's okay. Stuff like that, I'm not going to mind. What I would mind is if this text right here is super tiny, or if it's not fitting on the phone screen. If your abouts are overflowing the right side, the events or these events could be pared down a little for mobile. I could fix these and that's if for full points I would need to fix these so they would fit on a screen like this. Make it work at least for like the iPhone 5. So see, this is not working properly on my iPhone 5. Actually, no, I'll take that back. Make it fit at least on the iPhone 6. And the key to it is that you should use Balma. So Balma will automatically turn your columns into rows, and it'll do some other good RWD stuff. You're probably going to need to use media queries too. But Balma has some stuff built in. So if we look at Balma, we view the docs and check out responsiveness. And this will tell you you can use some mix-ins here. I'm trying to find a good whoa, this is new. Hey, cool, Balma, adding new stuff so you can do file upload. Don't mind me, I'm just poking around right now, trying to find the responsive helpers. Here we go. So here you can set up, you can do some, you can hide things on mobile if you need to. If you can't get an image to fit for some reason, if you can't adjust the image size, just hide it on mobile. It's okay if they have a slightly different experience. I wish I had an example ready here for you. Sorry. All right, so yeah, go around here. The responsiveness is the important part. So every element in Balma is mobile first and optimizes for vertical reading. So one important thing, the nav menu will be hidden. So careful with that. So next, you need to deploy your site. So after you mobilize, you need to deploy your site. So that was covered last class, where you can set up Firebase, set up a project in Firebase. You do not have to do the custom domain registration that I did today, because those cost money. You can just use your Firebase URL that they give you, the subdomain that they give you. But if you want to set up your own custom domain, feel free to go ahead and you can use that domain for your site. And you'll have a site. This site is going to be live to the world. So however you want to present it, present it that way. You can even tear it down after this class, but don't do it until I grade it. So your code should be set up so you can just use Firebase deploy to deploy your code to Firebase. Last, you must analyze your site. So this just means you need to add Google Analytics to your site and track every page view. So that's what we did today. You saw that in the previous section where we set up the page tracker, the analyze component on the root element, and that the route, and that will track every page view based on its path. So details, it's due by 8 a.m. on August 11th. You'll need to submit your GitHub link. So this one's a little different. You'll submit 2 links instead of just one. You're going to submit your GitHub link to your code repository and your Firebase link to, which is that CIS 137 .firebaseapp.com. So whatever your project name is, .firebaseapp.com. No late entries will be accepted. because the final grade will always already be in, so I won't be able to change the final grade once I submit them. That's it. Uh, Good luck, and don't forget, project part 4 is due this Friday. And if you're having any trouble with that or anything, please connect with me, and we'll get sorted out. And if you have any outstanding projects uh, that you haven't turned in yet, part 2 or part 3, please let me know. Please submit them and talk to me, and we'll figure something out. All right. I hope you all have a good weekend and the next few days. Good rest of your week. And I'll talk to you Monday.